Hey everyone, I'm Evan and welcome to another episode of the ProfNoctis Show. This episode we are talking about the game Life is Strange and some of the themes from it. Wade, what can we expect?
I hope you're ready for an existential crisis, maybe a midlife crisis, because you're going to join me and Evan on that journey as we talk about Life is Strange. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, sometimes a game is going to come along that doesn't just entertain you, but it's going to make you think deeply about your life, and that is what we're talking about today with a newish game called Life is Strange Double Exposure. Square Enix, huge shout out to them. They were kind enough to give us a copy of this game for me to test out, and I've got a lot to say about this game, but even more than that, I've got a lot to say about what it meant to me personally as a human being, questioning every choice I've ever made in my existence. That's what Life is Strange did to me.
Wade, that is a lot for the introduction to the show, but
Welcome.
I get the meaning. So you're talking about a game that you played that made you question the choices that you made in life and wonder if things could be different. That's pretty heavy.
Yeah, well, I mean, the game is pretty heavy, and it is a game that takes place in the college years of a girl's liberal arts college experience, I guess. I mean, these formative years, which are already kind of like heavy and weighty for all of us.
But this is your wheelhouse.
This is my wheelhouse, though. And so I got to experience what my students experience every single day. Their hatred for me, their professor. I got to experience the angst of their friendships and the will they, won't they of their love triangles. It was crazy. That's what this game was.
Okay, so the game Life is Strange is one where you play as a character experiencing some experience in their college years, and there's something about multiple timelines and past and complicated adventures that made you do some serious reflection. So our plan is to chat a little bit about what some of those themes were, what your experience was, the kind of human element of it, and then we'll work our way into some gameplay mechanics and things after our minigame stretch break. But it sounds like you had a good experience with it.
I did. So here's the thing. Life is Strange has been a long-running series. I think there's been 5 entries into this game now. I think this is like the 5th, maybe 4th, something like that. I'm not entirely sure. But here's the thing. It's my first entry.
Okay.
And so a lot of people, when I said this on social media, they were like, you're starting with this one? Like, how dare you? There's so much backlog. You're going to be so lost. Well, here's the thing. I wasn't lost. I found myself deeply engaged in this story. But the reality of this game, in my amateur first impression, is that this is a narrative, story-driven game where your choices matter. Evan, did you ever read like Choose Your Own Adventure books?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Of course you did. Yeah, and so like this is that kind of game. If anybody in the audience has ever played like the Telltale games, like The Walking Dead or the Wolf Among Us, that sort of thing, where you're playing through a scenario, a story, but along the way you have options, dialogue options, action options, where you're able to nurture friendships, destroy relationships, manipulate the story of the game. Like that's what this game really is. And as a testament to how well it does that, every time my character would play or make a choice, I would constantly reflect on, I remember doing something like that when I was in college.
Okay.
And like all of a sudden, relationships, friendships, opportunities that I squandered or took or whatever it was, they started to be conjured up in my mind. It was a wild experience of a game.
So playing this game made you think about your own past in some very direct ways. Now, was it just the setting that made you do that? Was it the way that they presented it that made you feel like, oh, I have to think about what this character is going to do. What do I want to do? Oh my gosh, what did I do when I was in this same situation? Tell me about what opened that door rather than you just feeling like you were just playing a game to get through the story.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. So we need to probably say a little bit of what this game and what this series is about. You're following the story, the life, or a season of life in this character. In this particular game, it's Max Caulfield, and I understand that she was a protagonist in former Life is Strange games,
Okay.
but not all of them. That's why I'm saying like a protagonist in the series.
I see why we're not getting into the details of the rest of it.
Right. So in this game, you're playing as Max Caulfield, and you are dropped into some semester in this liberal arts college. So you are, working with professors. You have friendships, relationships. You're spending time like in the student center, around the lake, and doing the things that students go to. You go to their normal hangouts and stuff. It almost feels like, I don't want to say a walking simulator because it's much more narrative driven than that.
Sure.
But here's the thing that really worked for me. The story is so well told. The characters are so believable that I knew the archetypes from my own life.
Ooh.
And so when I would see certain characters and have conversations with them, I was like, this is super relatable because I had a Safi in my life. That's a character in the game. Or I had a Vin, or I had all of these different archetypes. And it really, like, I would have to set the game down for a little bit. And I'd be like, okay, let me think about that while I'm at work today. It's really phenomenal storytelling.
It sounds like it's very well written then, and the characters especially are well written. And characters like that, I think, have to be really consistent for us to not just write off the archetype. So the longer that a character goes in and the more that you can see those real life folks in your life, that really goes to the vibrancy, I think, of the characters. They feel like they're actually making decisions and choices, because you say that it centers around this idea of saying yes to something is like saying no to something else, I think is a way that you've said that before. There's these like finality of some of this decision making about you wondering if you can engage with your past and learn from those mistakes, or what if you could rewind time, and what would those outcomes be and how would they be different? Tell me a little bit more about where this is like reaching in and making you think more about that.
So throughout the game, you are building relationships, and I don't know the back end gameplay stuff of this, but apparently there's some sort of affinity meter that's happening where you have like a how much you like somebody, or like how good of friends you are. It's really weird because I've never really thought about quantifying my friendships. Have you ever thought about that? Like, I'm like a level 8 with this person, but like I've got to beef up the level 5 down here or whatever.
Yeah, it's an interesting. It's more of a recruitment strategy than a friendship strategy, probably.
Well, it's kind of like,
sometimes you have to, I guess.
Do you remember MySpace Top 8?
Oh yeah.
Like rotating people in and out. And there was the passive aggression. Not us, because we are so well-adjusted individuals, but people we know would have this passive aggression of moving people into that top 8 and out. And it's like, oh man, I wonder what they did, right? So
it's the digital equivalent of, is someone invited to your birthday party or not? I mean, I think you can look at a slice of life every 5 years of like the human experience and figure out what the equivalent in the social structure of that is. So like when you're a little kid, it's got to be playing and toys and stuff like that. Then it's the birthday parties. Then it's who are you going to go to homecoming or prom with? Then it's who are you going to, where do you want to go to college? Who do you want to invite to this? Who's going to be in your wedding? Who's, there's all these different lenses that we could just drop in, and we do the same thing that we've always done as kids. We just keep doing it in different ways. It sounds like this game shed some light on some of that for you.
Well, it did. And when I was in college, I remember my freshman year of college. I remember this so vividly. It's my fall semester, freshman year. I didn't really know anybody, and no freshman really knows each other. I had gone through all of the orientation events of we did square dancing at my college. Did y'all do square dancing?
I went to a very big school, so I'm sure that someone did square dancing somewhere. I did take I took a ballroom dance class in college, so I'm sure that we had square dancing at some point.
That's funny. I did ballroom dancing in grad school, and like.
I thought I was getting away with it, really doing it for undergrad. You got grad school credit for doing it.
Well, mildly. It was more like a philanthropy credit, because
What?
I took ballroom dance lessons, and then like as part of the final, it wasn't really final, it was just credit, right?
Sure.
And we went to an like a assisted living community, like a
Oh, I
nursing
love
home,
that.
and we did like a Valentine's ballroom dance
Yes.
sort of thing. And so they lined up all of the ladies on one side and all of us guys on the other side, and the ladies. This was very Southern sensibility. Everybody,
Yeah.
they come over and they find their guy. Now, we had all kind of partnered up as
Right.
the students, and it was like, okay, we're gonna just like create a good vibe for everybody. This little old lady, I used to know her name. I guess it's better I don't say it, but she shoved my friend Mallory out of the way and took my hand and made me her dance partner for the night.
Yeah.
Mallory and I had arranged, like, we're going to be dance partners tonight and we're just going to, like, help lead the sort of thing. No, this sweet little old lady, like, knuckled Mallory out of the way and, like, got me. And we had a great time. Like, it was a fun night.
Yeah, I think it was. Well, listen. You kind of Sadie Hawkins danced that, or at least your partner did. You know, the girls ask the guys. Did. It's always a surprise. And so that's just how it is.
That's just how it is. In my khaki pants.
Hey, surely.
Do you like my sweater?
That's required. It's a required uniform. So when it comes to your students and how they engage with this, let's talk about how this ends up applying in people's lives. When we look at our past and we think about like the regrets that we had, you don't regret the ballroom dance class.
Okay, so here's the thing. That tangential story aside,
I loved
it. We did square dancing. We did all the orientation thing, but I didn't necessarily feel like I was getting to know people that first freshman year.
Yeah.
I also was in college pretty near my hometown. So that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend group in my hometown that I still saw every weekend. Okay.
Yeah,
so I was not forced to make these new relationships, these new friendships. And so I did, but they were all kind of peripheral, held off to the side. So anyway, in my freshman fall semester history class, it was like history and leadership, something like that.
Okay.
We were asked to do like group presentations, and I'm pretty good at presenting. So my group said, hey, why don't you speak for people? And so I did. And I spoke, and I guess it didn't suck because the professor and everybody was like, that was really good. Like, wow. And so students would come up to me afterwards. They were like, gosh, you speak real good. I mean, it's like that sort of thing.
You talk good.
And so I'm leaving. And I remember there was a guy, another freshman guy, walked up next to me. And we were just talking about the class, talking about the professor, talking about the stuff. And he was like, dude, you should come hang out with us later on. Like, we've got this whole like thing. Like, basically, you've got a good vibe. You seem like a good hang. Come hang out with us. We're all looking for friends. And I was like, I'm good. And I went on home and like, I've got my friend group at home. And I, to this day, I'm like, man, those could have been like some of my best friends of all time that I just will never know. Like, I literally was thinking about this guy, like, as I'm playing Life is Strange. I was like, I knew that guy. He was like a level 3 in the affinity meter for me. I never developed it.
School and work settings are really interesting because you inadvertently find yourselves around these groups of people and you don't really know the long-term impact that some of these relationships are going to have. And so if you could look into the future and you knew the gravity and the consequences, then sure, you might be able to choose an ideal pathway. But it's cool that they made a game that makes you think about that in the way that you play the game as well.
My therapist thanks them. I mean,
yeah, I think about that because there are people that you just met one-off and you're like, sure, they're cool, we're hanging out. And then all of a sudden you've been friends for 15 or 20 years. I met you on a set of stairs and like it was just how it was. And we could have been nothing, but now here it is. So
yeah.
I think this is a challenging concept for most people. You do have your segment of people who are like, no regrets, take no L's. We're just always push forward. It's continuous improvement. But most of us, if we're honest, think about our past from time to time at least. Typically when maybe you're falling asleep or it's a bad time to think about all the things that you've done in your past, when our world gets quiet enough for those things that are rattling around in the recesses of our brain to kind of emerge a little bit, we have these moments that we deal with it. And that can be really challenging. Past is not always regrets, right? Just because you want something to be different than the past, I don't know if that automatically makes it a regret per se. But I think the way that we talk about our past in things that we wish were different, it's typically spoken of in that like kind of regretful tone. Like, here's some of my regrets in the past. But I don't know if that's necessarily the most healthy relationship to have with our past. And it's cool that this game allows us to examine kind of that theme. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I think that there is, I've been in groups where reflection was misconstrued as regret. And so in order to have a truly breakthrough kind of moment, you had to be real sad about it. I've found this to be the case in a lot of groups that I've been in, actually.
Will you say that again?
Yeah. Sometimes reflection is, I'll say, conflated with regret. And that if there's got to be some sort of level of, I don't know, sadness that echoes in that level of reflection for it to be thing. I don't remember the exact way that I said it.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I just haven't heard it articulated that directly, where like the depth of your reflection does not need to match the depth of your sadness and thinking about the past. Right?
Yeah.
They're not directly correlated. And I always felt a little bit out of place, because when we would have these, well, what happened in the past? Let's unpack these things that we have to think of it. But they also, if I'm satisfied with the person that I am and I want to continue improving, some of those experiences for me are how I arrived at this place. And so I try not to be, but it's difficult at times to be this. If I could just lay all the strands of my life out perfectly, then I would know how to correctly manipulate them. And I think that is a lot of mental energy that goes into how we live our lives. And so to have talk about these branching paths that existed in the game, I wonder how it explored that and how the game mechanics there helped you to kind of reflect on what you value in the way that you approach your past.
Well, this game, while there are time mechanics, it's really more about, and gosh, I feel like I'm channeling 7 Rebirth all over again, but alternate realities.
Sure.
Right? It feels like Square Enix is very much on we are really full on into this idea of alternate realities and what could have been.
We have to get our slice of the multiverse.
We do, and they're doing it in spades. And I think that it really does create some interesting self-reflection. And that can lead to regret, and it can also lead to a realization, a radical acceptance, if you will, of what is. I'm going to read something because, like, Life is Strange took me back to this. In fact, a few episodes ago, I mentioned this.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, and I botched the quoting, but today I'm actually going to quote it.
We're ready.
Well,
this is your redemption moment for.
This is my redemption moment. No more regret.
All right. Let me know.
But it's it is T.S. Eliot's for quartets, and I just want to read one simple phrase. It says, "Time present and time past are both perhaps present in time future, and time future contained in time past. What might have been and what has been point to one end, which is always present. Mm-hmm. Footfalls echo in the memory down the passage which we did not take, toward the door we never opened, into the rose garden. My words echo thus in your mind." This passage, which I discovered because I was doing research for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's lecture series, has resonated with me in new ways because of Life is Strange. Because it is that idea of, like, somehow in remembering that interaction, walking back to the dorms from class after that freshman history class, there's a footfall that echoes. And it's not a regret, but it's like I hear the echoes of what life could have been, of a friendship that never was. Right?
It's a curiosity, almost this like subtle longing that we can approach these things that didn't happen or did. And I think the older that I get, the more that those curiosities are grown in my life. But then also I find these moments where I feel more disengaged with them than I ever have because the sheer volume of it. So it takes special moments now to kind of open that window and that door for me to look back in through. And it sounds like this game is a great vehicle to really facilitate some of that curiosity and some of that longing that we experience, and to be able to experience it through play. That's pretty neat.
So I don't know if you've seen any of this. A couple weeks ago, I was watching the Today Show during the Hodabration because one of the long-term anchors was retiring and moving on, and stuff. So I was watching all of this.
Do you want to send them a retirement message?
Just send Hoda, I love you. Thank you so much.
What was their name?
Hoda Kotb.
Okay, hold on. All right. Hey, hold on. I'll set you up. Hoda Kotb, this is Wade. Wade watches your show, a longtime viewer, longtime watcher, and he just wants to express just congratulations on retiring from the show. So, Wade, let's hear the message.
Hoda, thank you so much for all of your years of helping me wake up in the morning, of curating amazing conversations. I hope that Evan and I just do a shred of what you've been able to do, helping people start their day and live their best life. So thank you. I hope that you get to live your best life in retirement, whatever comes next.
Thank you, and congratulations on your retirement. Okay.
We don't have her on the show, but we're going to talk to her like we know her personally.
Yet.
That's what Hoda, you're welcome anytime. So,
bit of a pull, but all right.
Well, so I was watching this last week, right? And Hoda was interviewing this motivational speaker, former lawyer turned kind of author, motivational speaker. Her name is Mel Robbins, and she wrote a book that you may have heard of. It's called The Let Them Theory. And so I was really captivated by this interview because it was this woman that was saying, part of our freedom and part of our paralysis comes from our inability to just let people be and do what they are, to let memories be and do what they are and do, right? And instead, we need to adopt this phrase of just let them do it. Let them be. Let them have these things. And in turn, let me or let myself begin to act in kind.
Yeah.
And she says that, and this is what really resonated with me, a lot of these concepts are rooted in things like Buddhism and radical acceptance. It's the reality of saying, okay, yeah, there's plenty of other options that are out there that could have been woulda, shoulda, coulda, right? But what is, I am accepting, and I'm going to let those echoes, those footfalls continue to echo, and they're just going to be there. And it will only strive to make me better live into this present moment. Does that make sense? That way, these footfalls that are echoing down the corridors, they're not shackling you, but they are informing your next step.
These echoes in these threads don't demand resolution.
Right. They don't have to, because what can we do?
What an interesting perspective and way to think about that. Yeah. Yeah, they don't. Yeah, this is fitting. Those echoes don't demand resolution is sticking with me as kind of the action phrase as part of that. And it is interesting that we do feel the need to explore maybe what could have been. I've had so many conversations about the past. When you find yourself in situations where you're commonly helping people or organizations navigate challenges that they encounter, you typically deal a lot with the past. And so understanding what happened, and even just the different narratives that can happen around one particular instance or dynamic, tells me how infinitely complicated that collective experience is when we look at the past for ourselves. So knowing that there's a lot of weight and emotion, I've thought about a particular conversation I had with someone who was talking about the past, and in a moment of vulnerability, they just said, if only I hadn't done this action. And it wasn't some grand action. It's not like they stole an airplane or, did anything even illegal. It was just one particular instance. They wished that they had a different reaction when someone responded to them. And they spoke as if it had shaped and impacted their relationship with this individual for decades because of this one moment in time. And I could hear the pain in their voice as it was acute like that. And so I wonder, when you have conversations and you encounter folks as we're processing these echoes and feeling like they need to have resolution, but there's still a lot of emotionality and intense feelings attached to these one moments. What do we do with all of that?
Yeah, the thing that it really makes me think of is one decision very rarely is going to permanently set the trajectory for the rest of your life. However, certain decisions have such gravitas and such weight that we can't help but commit to the bit. And so we continue to live as though that, we stick our heels in, we dig our heels in, we stick to the decision that we made in that one moment. Whereas, having a moment of humility or reconciliation or fixing it in that next step would be more challenging, but it would be course correcting. And I think that the further that we get away from some of those catalytic decisions or moments, that's why I call it committing to the bit. It's not as big a deal usually as we are making it to be in our mind. And this is for little things. This isn't for catastrophic things that actually do change the trajectory of your life.
Right.
These are for micro decisions that, my tone was off or whatever, but then I can't course correct to reconcile or something like that.
I think this would be our standard disclaimer. Like, we're not talking about giant. We're talking about just how the little decisions we make to live our lives. There's professional environments that are necessary and helpful for various traumas and challenges that we've dealt with.
Absolutely.
So don't hear what we're not saying here in conversation. But I think that is really at its core part of what can be so paralyzing about this decision making. That saying yes to something means saying no to something else, and that I did that in the past and I feel stuck and I feel trapped in it, is that we don't engage with the right mechanisms to help us get unstuck per se. And so we can not interact with them in the way that we do with other things in our life, because they're often very private. We don't talk about them. We kind of hold them in. And how do you handle some of those trade-offs in life when you think about past decisions? That saying yes to something meant that you said no to something else. Like, I'm probably not going to be an NBA basketball player at this point in my life, right? That door has closed. But at one point when I was younger, I wondered, right? What would it look like to be that? Now, the chances of that ever happening for me, even when I was younger, let's just say were very, very low. But as a kid, those are the things that you think about. And I don't think we change all that much from when we have those same dreams. We just have more lived experience that we have to wade through to try and analyze them. I laughed at the wade through, and then I was going to kick it to you, and I couldn't handle it. You saw me. You saw my
what
eyes.
What happens when your name is a verb? It's such a great question, Evan. And I mean, I'll tell you, I can't speak from anything but personal experience. I mean, I've had a lot of interests in my life growing up, and a lot of career possibilities. When I was in middle and high school, and I've said on the show a couple of times, I wanted to be a Disney animator. I wanted to work for Disney. I wanted to draw. I did the at Disney World, they have something called the Disney Institute, where you can go and you can draw and stuff. And I forced my parents to enroll me in it while they were going to the parks, because I wanted to learn and draw from these animators and illustrators and stuff. And I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And so I wanted to do all of this. I had this creative flow to me. I was the kid that would write these fan fiction stories, or I would create my own worlds and all this kind of stuff. And I would write down these things in class. I remember I wrote a 50-page, this is how I learned how to type, by the way. I typed out a 50-page Sonic the Hedgehog fan fiction. I wish I still had it. But
I was going to say, I remember a particular Sonic fan fiction and some Sonic drawings that you were a big fan of. Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, I mean,
movies in theaters now.
No, love that movie. Because it, again, rekindles some of those same things. So I had all of these creative through lines. Well, as I kind of grew, my interests changed. I had new things that kind of captured my attention. And I ended up going into a very different realm. I was enthralled by the mythology and the stories and the meaning making in religious studies. I went into the pastorate, like classical pastoral ministry for several years exclusively. before I kind of evolved into, working in a university setting with religious life and then, religious studies, research and all that kind of stuff. But what's been really interesting is as I've approached middle age, I kind of had a little bit of a breakdown. Something happens when you're about 35. I've talked about this on stream before, where it's just like, have all of my choices just left me bankrupt in this moment? Like, am I unsatisfied? Like, what led me here? And so you start to rethink all of the decisions that brought you here. And most of us, I think a lot of us, if we're honest with ourselves, we never get unstuck from that moment. We're just paralyzed, and we're forced to either say, okay, well, it is what it is. It's neither good nor bad. I just have to live with it. And so you go to work and you go through the grind until you retire, and maybe then you're happy or something like that. That's a pretty sad existence. Or you spend all of your time longing and wishing for what was, and you can't really embrace the current moment. These are two extremes that are pretty bad. The way that I've weirdly been able to manage this is kind of conjuring back up and rekindling some of those lost creative juices. It's things like this. It was streaming. It was teaching. I've gotten my hand into writing. I picked up piano and guitar during COVID, right? It was things like that that began to not redecide those things, but to kind of remind myself of like, okay, I am more than just my decisions, and there's some things that can be recouped.
Yeah, it is hard to say yes to something when you know that it means saying no to something else. It is. I mean, it's just difficult. Branching paths are challenging, and I think we have to say that.
We're told as kids, you can be anything. That is true for the most part. If you really, really work, hard work and effort and stuff, there's a lot of possibilities out there. I mean, I'm probably never going to be an NBA basketball star, like you said, because I am short and I'm terrible at basketball. The coordination just isn't there.
Being good at basketball is a good prerequisite for being in the National Basketball Association.
You have a propensity, and we tell kids, particularly, you can be anything. But one thing we have to realize is that you can't be everything, and that's different. You can be anything, but you can't be everything.
You can be anything, but you can't be everything. I think that focus is a great statement, because we're talking about growing up in the time that we grew up in, like the United States too. And we have a lot of viewers and people who pay attention to the show who are from other parts of the world, and our culture values youth over almost everything else.
Everything else.
And there's other cultures or environments within our culture that value wisdom and experience. And not that doesn't happen, but general American society and what you're going to engage with media, television, the experience, from my perspective, all values youth in a crazy way. We're all trying to get younger. Younger is the thing. The young folks are the ones who set the trends. This is how we do things. And that is the case in other cultures too. But the fear of the decisions that I made in the past feel heightened by the culture that I grew up in compared to friends that I've talked with that grew up in other cultures. They said, well, you have plenty of time to figure it out. You can pivot your jobs. And I'm like, you don't understand. I've got 12th grade. Then I got to go to college. Then I have to start getting my work experience because I have to make enough money by this point to be able to do this. And if I haven't reached this milestone by here, then I'm not going to have this kind of life down the line, because these things don't just happen. There's something. And so there's a lot of fear that exists with the past because it's a departure from youth that maybe isn't present in other cultures. So the first time I had conversations with people who grew up in different places and environments, it blew my mind. I didn't know how to process it and deal with it. I was incapable of it.
Yeah. I was in South Korea doing doctoral work several years ago, research and stuff. And I remember that one of the guides that was with us, like, not really a guide, but like a
host,
just a host, I guess, that was like helping lead us and guide us, keep us safe as we were touring and stuff. I had just turned 35 and I just lost my dog of 12 years at this point. So it was a milestone. Okay. And I'm like falling apart inside because I'm like, the dog that I got my senior year of college is gone. I'm 35, and though that means I can run for president now in the United States, it also means that I am no longer cool. That is just over.
Sounds like you were feeling very fragile.
I was very fragile. And so we get this host, this like dumb kid who's beautiful, and he just like is like guiding us around, and he's so charismatic.
And I'm like, how mad you are at this person. I'm so mad, and I'm like, for being that. It's amazing.
I'm just like, you're just beautiful, and like everything's going your way, and like you've got the rest of your life ahead of you, and I'm just like a little aggressively, but no, I'm also smiling, right? But I'm like aggressively hating him, which is like under my breath. So anyway, it's about 4 days in, and like the worst part is that he's super likable,
and you're falling apart.
I'm falling apart, and I'm like, he is everything that I could have been if I was born in South Korea, right? Like, it's just,
you're making excuses for the imaginary you. Like, that competitive. God, I love it.
That's the competitive nature in me.
It's perfect. I get it. Anyway, your brain does it. Like, you don't choose it. Like, it just happens.
And so he's he is going to grab our lunch or something, because he's also like our translator and stuff. And so I'm just like sulking, and this woman comes over to me, like she's an older woman, and I don't know what her role in this group was, but she joined us, and she was like, "Oh, it's so amazing how he's just got his whole life together and stuff." I was like, "It's really amazing, lady." And she's just marveling at him, and I'm like doing the same thing that I'm begrudgingly doing inside.
Yeah.
But she's just very vocal about it, and she was like, "Oh, and did you know he just got engaged?" And I was like, "Of course he did, because like that's what life does when you're beautiful and you've got everything going for you." And she's just like, "Yeah," and he's got this amazing job, and he's just living his best life. I was like, "I know, lady." And so finally she was like, "And he's just so young." And I said, "What?" And she was like, "Yeah, he's just so young to be able to do all of these things." And I was like, "I mean, yes, you're absolutely right. Are you trying to tell me that I am behind?" And like, I didn't say that,
what you're
but like,
hearing, for sure.
Trying to dismiss her entirely.
Yeah.
And she said, "Can you believe that he is only 38 years old?" And I said, "What? Are you kidding me?" And she said, 38 years old, that is so young to get married and to have your career. And I was like, this is a cultural difference right now.
And a huge testament to their skincare routine.
Well, also that, right? And so I racked up on skincare routine while I was in South Korea and brought it back.
I've heard it's the best.
But I was just thinking to myself, right? It's like, okay, maybe I'm not as far behind as I thought. Maybe it's just the standard to which I've been holding myself. Maybe it's cultural, and then it blew my mind.
Isn't it funny how you trapped yourself in a narrative perpetuated by misinformation? And
exactly right.
Like, the fact that you can just not have the narrative that you tell yourself created this prison that you found yourself in. And this woman, she freed you from that prison.
She did, and I took it as an assault because I had my guards up.
Right. Do you think she knew? Like, do you think she could tell it on your face that she'd been like you were secretly raging?
Probably. I think that she was probably a divine messenger sent to like chill me out. I think that's probably what it was.
I think that is. I think that's fair. I think it is really interesting the role that forgiveness has in some of these things.
Yeah.
Because you essentially forgave yourself for not being where he was, and forgave yourself for resenting him in some ways. And it created freedom in the situation, that there's a permission giving that this woman introduced to you inadvertent to her. She didn't know that necessarily you needed to hear that, but there was something about that statement and the recentering of the narrative that changed everything about your perspective and drove you to better action. I think that's the interesting part, is what is the thing that unlocked that for you and drove you to better action? But I think we probably need to talk about it on the other side of the minigame stretch break.
Probably do, because that's where exactly we can run into the Life is Strange gameplay stuff.
Okay, great. So if you want to hear about some of the actions that would lead to, and then we're going to be checking in on some of the New Year's things. At this point in your life, if you're following along with this weekly, this is the point in season in life where our biggest challenges are going to come for the new habits that we're trying to develop that we wanted to commit to a few weeks ago. So we're going to be talking about how some of this can contribute to that as well. So we'll see you on the other side. All right, everybody, it's that time of the episode where we get to know each other a little bit better. It's our mini game stretch break. We're glad that you're joining us. But in honor of last episode where we talked a lot about Michael Bolton at the end of the episode, if you didn't make it all the way, then don't worry. We talked about Michael Bolton. Let's hit that theme music. 3, 2, 1. Tell me how am I supposed to live without you? How have I been loving so slow. I told them we were only going to sing the one line. I just wanted to take a little solo. I have no idea how that's going to sound on the other end, and we're just we're going to toss it in. So we'll see how much love that gets in post. That's right. It's part of the episode where we talk about we get to know each other. I'm so off put by this. We get to know each other a little bit better. We've got our bingo wheel of vulnerability minus the number 32, which has been mailed to Sleep Easy, who won our bingo wheel. So that is headed out to Sleep Easy. So Sleep Easy will decorate it and hopefully return it. We'll see. Hit him up on his socials and make sure that he knows that he needs to take good care of bingo ball number 32. Wade, you've got some questions we're going to ask. What number do you want here from the bingo wheel?
4.
4? All right, I'll take 3. Tell me when.
When? I thought I saw 4, so.
42. Again. And look, I signed it.
The odds, and you signed it. This is rigged.
Rigged.
This is so rigged.
I would have guessed 42 again if I would. Can you imagine if I guessed 42 and then 42? Subtext is going to lose it.
He is going to lose it.
It's the answer to life and everything. So
Subtext lives for the minigame bingo wheel.
He loves it. He absolutely loves it. Okay, so number 42. Get us our question here.
So today we are going to be going from the Hero's Journal side quest deck, which usually gives you a challenge, but we're going to make it into a question for ourselves. The challenge is, and also we remember that they give us a nonsensical quote.
Oh,
so
no.
I'll have to read the nonsensical quote.
Okay, I'm ready. Hold on, let me prepare myself. All right, I'm ready.
One of my favorite things. Okay, so here it is. Time travel. Do something kind that your future self will appreciate. So the question would be, what is something kind that you can do that your future self will appreciate? Now, while you're thinking, here is our nonsensical quote.
Thank you.
Never be cruel. Never be cowardly. Remember, hate is always foolish and love is always wise. Always try to be nice, but never fail to be kind. The 12th Doctor.
Okay.
I don't know what that is. Is that a Doctor Who reference? I don't know. Doctor.
I don't know. Somebody can tell us in the comments.
Anyway.
Okay, what am I going to do?
It's not a romance novelist like it was last time.
What am I going to do for kind future? Give me a time frame. How far out in the future? I need some help. I need parameters. Give me a time frame.
28 years from now.
Oh, Lord. So 28 years from now, what am I going to do? So that's really two major things, right? That would be financial and physical health, right? For me, those would be the relational capital. I'm pretty confident that I'm like going to manage that at this point, but saving a little bit more and exercising a little bit more and maybe eating different things or building different physical habits would be probably where that lands for me in 28-year time frame.
28 years. That's a heinous amount of time.
You have to do 6 months.
You have to do 6 months?
No, you have a 6 month time frame.
I have to do 6 months. Oh, crap. Okay. Because I was thinking about 28. That's okay. I'll do 6 months. I think daily sunscreen.
Daily sunscreen. So there you go. Ladies and gentlemen, whether it's your financial and physical goals or whether it's your dermatological goals with daily sunscreen like Ray.
That's what I learned in South Korea.
That's it. It's that snail mucin and the retinol and all them other mucins. Okay, so What is it for you that you can do now that your future self will thank you for? So maybe it's just having a glass of water. Maybe it's preparing a meal. Maybe it's calling someone that you've been meaning to call. Maybe it's knocking out a little chore. Maybe it's having a little time for yourself. Or maybe it's fast forwarding 10 seconds to get to the end of the minigame stretch break. We'll see you. Okay, everybody, welcome back from the minigame stretch break. So, Wade, we're picking back up on the story that you told about your trip to South Korea, their amazing skincare products, routines, and instructions, and how a woman freed you from a prison of your own design, where you had these narratives that you were telling yourself about life and how you were behind. And then you found out that this person that you were raging against and so jealous of was actually 3 years older than you, and that you had all the time left in the world. But her behavior freed you from that kind of narrative in that prison and actually moved you to some appreciation and some action steps. So pick back up with us where you left off. So she says this, you feel things kind of change in your heart, and then what happens?
Well, that's exactly right. I began to feel things in my heart. I was just like, okay, this is new. Okay, I still have time. My best years aren't behind me. Like, I haven't wasted the best years of my life. Not to say that, 20 to 35 are your best years, but especially in America, like you said a little bit earlier, I mean, there is this emphasis on, like, this is the best time for work productivity, creativity, all that kind of stuff. You can do things that you won't be able to do later on in life. But what it taught me in that moment was, like, there's so much more that I can do and be, and I'm not out of time. Okay?
I'm not out of time.
I'm not out of time, and I can still do stuff. I can still leverage things. But what it demanded for me to do was to stop saying to myself, if only I had done differently back then. Okay? I had to say, I am where I am. It is what it is. What now? What next? It kind of reminds me of Frozen 2. When the song The Next Right Thing, right?
Tell me about this song.
To know, oh, this song is amazing. Okay, like Frozen 1 is awesome, but Frozen 2 is really, really great.
That's where it really opens up.
And me coming back. Well, but every song is just really great in Frozen 2, but there's this one particular moment where Anna, is the sister to Elsa that everybody knows from Frozen.
Which I found out is played by Kristen Bell last week.
Yeah, surprise. It's 2010 again, or whatever it is.
I didn't know. You either know or you don't know.
Or you don't. You're
and
right.
I didn't know.
No regrets. There's a version of you in the corridors that knows this. Echoing your footfalls.
Snowy corridors.
Snowy footfalls. Anyway,
do you want to build a snowman?
She doesn't know what to do next. And so there's this long song about when you don't know what to do, you just do the next right thing. And then you keep doing the next right thing until you get to where you need to go. Because doing the right thing right now is what's important, even when you don't know what's next. And I'm like, that's actually pretty sound advice. I mean, I know that, like, it's great for kids, but, like, as, a guy in middle age, I'm like, that's pretty darn good. Like, I need to hear more of that every morning of my life. And so obviously she's my Alarmo ringtone.
Oh my gosh, always this guy with the Alarmo.
I love my Alarmo.
We still haven't
or as I call it, the Switch 2, because
dude, everybody's like, oh my gosh, it's Switch 2. Here's an alarm clock.
Here's an alarm clock. So, okay, so when it comes to the game with all of this, like, the reason that all of this, like, however long this conversation has been, the reason it took me down this is because around chapter 3 or 4, I realized that I had made all of the wrong choices in this game. Okay, like,
that's the start.
From where I wanted to be at the beginning, okay?
Yeah.
Who I wanted Max Caulfield to be in my playthrough, I'd failed. Okay? And here's why. It goes back to something I said earlier. You can be anything, but you can't be everything.
Yeah.
But I wanted Max Caulfield to be the most people-pleasing people pleaser that ever pleased people. Okay. I wanted her to do this. I wanted her to be loved and to love everyone.
Yeah.
And so that blew up right in my face, just like it does in real life.
No.
Because when you make alliances with some people who have beef with other people, they see you as a traitor on both sides. And this happened to me so many times.
It can happen.
It can. And it happened to me. And so what happened by the end was my Max never fell in love. She tried. She never had friends. Everyone was very upset with her.
What did you do to this poor woman?
I just didn't let her choose. Like, and this is such a thing. Like, when you try to keep peace with everyone at like, a 5 out of 10,
yeah,
you never get the benefits of having a 10 out of 10 friendship with somebody or a 0 out of 10 enemy with somebody, right?
Yeah,
and so
that can be challenging.
It's just middling the entire way, okay? And like, I don't love dealing with absolutes and extremes. I'm no Sith, right? But what I will say is that in this game, I should have leaned towards certain characters more than others. Because there were characters that I had a preference for. I was like, I really want Max Caulfield in this game to be like best friends with a guy named Vin. Yeah. Like, he actually reminded me of some friends that I had in college. And I was like, I want you to like be best friends with him, if not date him. Like, this is awesome for you, Max.
Don't miss out on that. I missed out on this, Max. You're like a parent.
I missed out on all of this. You could do this. Like, just go hang out with him and his friends.
So it sounds like you were really engaged with the character. And you mentioned earlier that the writing on the characters was really good. I think the visual style of the game is one that is more engaging. And I like the kind of format, because in a game that you don't do a ton, but you experience a ton, those things need to be really well done. And it sounds like the lessons and stuff are apparent. So I'll just remind everybody of kind of the 4 categories that will kind of use to look at these games, right? For us, we talk about immersion, which for us is how invested and connected did we feel to the story. We're going to talk about themes. We're going to talk about lessons. And then we're going to talk about who this game is for and talk about the audience. So there's plenty of places to find reviews and all sorts of other things. For us, that's the thing. How well was I connected to it? Did I feel immersed in it? What did we learn? What are the themes? And then who's going to enjoy this? Because we believe that there's an audience for every game. A lot of the times we just have to find who that is. So that's kind of our spiel. So when it came to the lessons that you learned and some of the themes, we've explored those in a good bit. Yeah. It sounds like it did a really great job of you connecting with those through specifically like the writing and the character design.
I was immersed completely. Like the writing, the characters design, it was one of those things that I could imagine these being real people. And I even felt for them like they were real people because they were so well represented on the screen. Yeah. And the voice acting was just really, really good as well. In fact, I think Max's voice actor was nominated for like best performance for the Game Awards. Just really, really great stuff. Wow. And so the immersion for me, from the audio to the art design and all that stuff, one thing that I will say is that I played on Steam, and any fan of the show knows that I am not a PC gamer. I do not optimize things. It is just not great. And I have a doable PC, right? It's good. Like,
do you want me to do this part?
Yeah.
All right.
Because I don't know what I'm talking about.
Wade is very capable.
GeForce RTX Asus.
Wade has a nice computer, but he experienced some technical challenges with it being a port. So sometimes, for those of you who aren't aware, a game will be developed for one system or console specifically, and then eventually it will be ported over into another platform. There's a lot of technical challenges that can happen with that port. Now, it's better than it's ever been. Okay, in the history of all video gaming, it is the best it's ever been. Hear us say this. But when we have a game on one platform and you move it to another, you can experience some technical challenges with that. And you experience some technical challenges, some graphical errors that kind of took you out of the environment and things like that. And it can happen.
Texturing, some blurriness, things like that. I optimized. I got on Reddit and I tried to troubleshoot it as best as I could. My thought for getting it on Steam, because I very rarely do that because, again, I'm not a PC gamer, was I had a big trip coming up and I wanted to play it on my Steam Deck. It's also important to know that this game was not as of this time Steam Deck verified. So, I mean, that was a double whammy for me.
It was a big ask. So
it was a big ask, and it was playable, it was doable, and I got through it, but it was not in the most pristine form. which lets you know how good of a game this is, that I was still immersed, even in spite of my own technical inadequacy. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it was not a deterrent to me. That's how much I enjoyed this game, and I think a merit to its quality.
But I think that also goes to who is this game for in the audience to think about this. You know, if you don't want to deal with any challenges that could come with a port, then if you are going to recommend it, then maybe choose a platform that you know it's going to be consistent. And if you have the wherewithal and the knowledge and you feel confident in your ability to navigate those on PC, then for that audience, then you can maybe get it on PC and feel like you want to take that time. But I think it's just a heads up. You know, some people want to just put the disc in and hit play and it needs to work. And some people love to mod it out and make it different and do all those different things. And those are different folks. Now, there are things that they would overlap, but that's a part of it. So then when it comes to feeling immersed and connected to the characters, tell me more about what drew you in and how it contributed to the lessons.
I think that it was particularly interesting that you are playing one particular perspective. You don't control multiple characters in this game. It is Max's story, and it is your decisions through Max. And so you're learning about characters as you want to. And you can completely ignore some characters. I think that was a really important aspect for immersion. I could spend as much time as I wanted in a particular chapter, just kind of getting to know people, doing myriad activities and stuff. Thought that was really, really awesome. One other thing that I do have to say here about immersion, because like I said earlier, when I put this on social media, everybody kind of downplayed the idea that I could ever enjoy this game. It is a sequel. I think number 3 or 4 in Max Caulfield's saga. That did not bother me at all. Okay. In fact, it invited me to want to know more about those former games. So I am interested in going back to play those games, but I totally understood what was happening in this one.
Yeah.
So that was not an immersion breaker for me at all.
Yeah. So we've talked about some of the lessons. We've talked about a few of the themes. What are some of the other themes that we kind of haven't covered besides kind of the past that you feel like got pulled out? Or did they all kind of nest in that theory of what could be? And I also want to know about the specifics of how you play the game. So, what are you doing when you play it? You're running around. Are you exploring? Is there action? Is it mainly conversations and exploration?
It is.
Tell us about that.
This is fascinating because there's no battle system or mechanic or really even gameplay mechanic in this aside from walking around and making decisions by pressing a single button. Okay, so the way that it will happen is you're talking to somebody and it'll be a break in the conversation. It's like, do you say this or do you say this? If you want to say this, press this button. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. Okay. On critical decisions, it's timed. But it's never like a dexterity thing. Not stressful. You never have to figure out, like, what button do I need to press? Oh my gosh, can I do this technically?
And you could pause it in that moment. So when the
I don't know if you can pause it during the timed things because I think they want you to have some urgency in that. There's probably a setting, but I didn't explore that.
Yeah. Okay. So it's going to be a lot of listening, a lot of reading, and a real narrative experience. But as far as the gameplay mechanics, it's pretty open to anyone who would want to experience the story. You really wouldn't you would have any hesitation really recommending it for anyone.
This is one of those rare games where there is no combat. And I've seen a critique occasionally where it's like every game is so violent, right? Whether you're jumping on Goombas' heads or, kicking turtle shells or playing Call of Duty. Can we get a game that doesn't have any of that? And this game doesn't have any of that. Now, that's not to say that serious tones and issues aren't addressed because they are. And there are acts of not violence, but danger in the game that happen. You're just not in control of it, if that makes sense. You're not pushing a button and something like that happens as a result.
The cause and effect seems to be another big theme of the game. We talk about what could we do if we could rewrite the past, but there's also a forward focus to it too. What am I doing to impact the future? How did that kind of narrative gameplay think about looking forward about what could happen if you change things and how you engage with the character that way.
Well, the basic conceit of this game is that Max is able to travel into a mirror version of the world where one event didn't happen. Okay. And it's the death of a character. And so in one world, this character is alive. In the other world, she is not. And so you're able to see and build relationships across these two sort of worlds. And one of the lessons and themes that you're able to see is the impact of one event, right? How did this change the trajectory of the holiday season on this campus? Because, I mean, they went in one world from having like this amazing party where everybody's singing and karaoke to this other one where they're not even partying or setting up lights and stuff. And so you really get this instantaneous dichotomy of like that what if sort of thing.
Is it like collective trauma? It's exploring these themes of like collective trauma among a group of people and the disparity between the two? Because there's not a lot of games that do that in a way that you could really explore the narrative in the same depths of what we're discussing here.
I think it's so interesting to play this game hot on the heels of 7 Rebirth, which explores some of these similar themes of like, what if this character had not died, or what if this had happened instead? It's just the impact, the butterfly effect of one moment. But I haven't seen it so clearly delineated. I mean, you push a button in certain areas and you transfer worlds. So you're able to see these exact same characters, whether they've got a frown or a smile. You know, I mean, it's like,
wow, that's really creative.
It's really, really cool. And it's seamless the way that this happens. Like the world just kind of changes. It's not a loading screen. It's like, oh, wow, amazing.
What a cool technical achievement to have, to be existing in both dimensions at the same time and being able to access them without that.
Well, and to T.S. Eliot's poem earlier, there are certain spaces, I think theologically we would call these thin spaces, where you can hear the conversations on the other side.
Ooh,
and it's like, so you can listen in on the other side through Max's special abilities and stuff. It's really, really an interesting thing. And it informs what she does in the world that she's in.
Yeah.
Which is a great lesson for us. Like, okay, what am I thinking about with that version of me that just never was? Like, how can I reclaim some of that from this echo that I'm hearing from
I love this. Let's talk a little bit about the audience so we can frame some of the ages who's going to experience this. And then I want to hear more about the kinds of conversations that you would want to have with someone who was playing this game. And we'll have a little preamble before that. So as far as audience goes, the themes, the gameplay we've established is a narrative mystery type gameplay. So as far as like age things, that's almost always going to be theme, language, topic related for that kind of guidance. Because mechanically, seems like it's pretty open for everybody, or even the kind of thing you could play sitting on the couch, passing the controller back and forth with like a narrative experience. Talk to me a little bit about the themes and some of the ages. Where are we cresting into? Who is this going to land with? No younger than probably.
I would say high school and up, leaning on maybe upper high school. I think that a freshman and sophomore would probably be okay with this, but with some guidance and some conversations, there's just some serious tones that happen in this. Ranging from everything from self-harm to sexual ethics, sexual preference, a lot of hot button issues in today's culture. That while the game handles them very sensitively, this might be a topic for players to consider as they're approaching this game. In addition to that, to really kind of sink into the themes, I think that you have to have a little bit of lived experience in order to really appreciate it. I think it's for anybody that wants to play it, first of all, but I think that to really appreciate it, I mean, I'm telling you, as somebody in their kind of middle-age working class era, right? Like that, this game spoke to me at a different level. I think college students are really going to like it. I want to use it in some of my college classes and with some groups to kind of talk about agency, decision-making, friendships, and some of these other issues.
Okay, so I think that's a great framing for, who it's for. Let's talk about like some of the lessons and conversations that if let's say I'm never going to play the game, but somebody that I care about, I know is playing that game. This is a big thing that we're working to expand more with the channel and in the way that we discuss these things, just to kind of peel back the curtain a little bit, is that we would love for folks who love people who play games but aren't ever going to play it to be able to enjoy this content, or at least sections like this where you can click to it quickly and watch a 5 to 10 minute clip about questions that you could ask somebody who's playing this game to get into meaningful conversations, because we want this to bring people together. And so this is our attempt to try and do that. We're going to try and get better at it as we go, and we're navigating it. But when we get to this questions you would want to ask part, this is one of my favorite parts of the show. When we talk about games like this, because setting up the framework for questions that are more intimate and connected without you having to spend hours researching the game, all you have to do is pay attention to the show. And if you know that somebody's interested in this game, you've got some talking points and you know about it. It's really exciting to me. So having experienced it, you talked a little bit about that first question that you wanted to introduce with some of the lessons. What is that interaction going to be with somebody who's playing this game, even if I'm not going to play it?
At the end of every chapter, there's 5 chapters. You have a rundown of all of the choices that you could have made. And you have the percentage of players that chose each one of those options. So some of them,
that's fun.
It's really interesting. So 63% of players chose this, and 27 or whatever chose this over here. 37 chose this over here.
You started saying the numbers and I wasn't thinking about how they added up to 100. I was like, he's going to get to the other side of it, and I'm just waiting on the other side.
37, and it tells you which one you aligned with. I think that's a really interesting thing. But for somebody that has a loved one who's playing this, or a friend or something like that, a great conversation is, so what did you choose and why? That's simply it. What did you choose and why? Yeah. Have them articulate some of this. And so I think that this is a great game to do in a group setting where everybody plays through a chapter and then comes together for a meeting, almost like a video game book club. And it's okay, so what did you do there? Because I was torn on that one. And you could have some great human conversations and hypotheticals. And then, it leads to other things. Like, if you ever had a friend like that, or if you ever had to make a decision like that in your life, do you kind of regret that? What is the version of you that would have made that choice?
Oh, yeah.
I similar to what we're doing here, it's just in that microcosm of that chapter.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're more active, then, sit down on the couch, have some conversations about that end screen. Or if you know that somebody's getting near maybe the end of the chapter, that's a good time to pop in the room and just have a seat on the couch and watch a little bit or
it's a great game to watch along with, because it's not super active. You're not distracting them and stuff like you would. Mom, stop watching me play Call of Duty. Right. I mean, this is one where everybody on a couch is going to be engaged in it. So.
Yeah. And then I think from a more general perspective, then let's say we're not going to go chapter by chapter, but if I knew that somebody had played this game or was playing it and enjoyed it, it seems to me questions like, what were some of the more challenging choices that you had to make? Or what was it like to not be able to get it your way, one way or the other, when it comes to this game? And what other general questions would you say are good to ask?
I don't know. I mean, really, just it's hard to ask questions without knowing the specifics. But you can know that this game is about friendship. It's about ethics in some ways. It's about romance in other ways. And asking questions around those sort of things are really, really great. So, who did you romance? Who was your favorite friendable character in the game, and why? And just.
Was there a character that you
process it?
Yeah, I think I like questions like, was there a character that you wanted to be close with but ended up not being as close as you thought? What is
Story
that?
of my life. Yeah.
Does that happen to you?
Story of my game.
Has that ever happened to you in life? Is there someone in your life that you wish that you were a little closer with that maybe you're not? Right? You can see how this game creates these little windows that can be opened into access, and that's kind of what we want to get to, is these gains before games, this play that happens
Say, yeah.
and opens the door to that kind of connection. So as we kind of start to wrap up, we wanted to revisit our idea of the ways that we set ourselves up for this year. Most folks listen week to week, right? So for those of you who are listening to week, you know that we have talked about how Wade handles some of his goal setting, wrapping up the year. You've probably tried something new in your life at this point. And when this episode releases, it's going to be at kind of a crucial juncture for what happens and how we build habits in our lives. So Wade, you wanted to talk a little bit about when it comes to habit forming, how we say yes to something, meaning we're going to have to say no to something else. And in the context of this game, there's things I think in our habits and our goals for the year where at this point, we're probably starting to realize that in order to say yes to some of the things that we really wanted to, it means that we're going to have to say no to some of the things that maybe we didn't expect to have to say no to be able to get to where we want to go. Because you talk about this thing that takes about 21 days to build a habit. So tell us a little bit more about that, and how are you engaging with this at this point in your year?
I mean, I really feel like there's research that supports like 3 different epochs in your creation of a new habit and a new ritual sort of thing. But the first one, we're coming up on the tail end of the first era or first phase of it. And it really is habit forming and ritual. And so discipline, this is where we do a check-in and say, how are my resolutions going? How are my routines going?
Yeah.
Have I built in a rhythm of life that's allowing this to be conducive? And that's really what that first sort of arena is about. So really the first 21 to 30 days of anything are tough simply because it's new. And so, the question to our viewers would simply be, how are some of those initiatives, those goals going? And it is okay to tweak not only the goals, but especially the routines and rhythms that are going to set you up for success. I think it's probably still too soon to say the goal is unattainable. Just
don't give
if
up.
anybody's thinking that, like it's just a lost cause for 2025, hey, a date is just a date, right? So like you're not off track. Let's just tweak the rhythms a little bit and we can keep going.
Yeah, let's talk about real quick how we deal with disruptions. Because at this point, you've experienced a disruption that's trying to break up your goal or your routine, your habit. I've experienced it with the things that I wanted to do. You've experienced with yours at this point. What is it? What is your voice in your head when you experience a disruption? Tell us a little bit about how you manage those disruptions and how much do we need to anticipate them versus just trying to relax, focus on what we're supposed to focus on, and don't just be fearful that things are going to get off base.
Hey, listen, if you haven't like failed in your resolution up to this point, kudos to you. But I know the vast majority of us have like stumbled or fallen or
experienced a disruption.
Experienced a disruption. I love the way that you said that. And so if that's the case, shake it off, like Taylor Swift says, and get back on the horse, like somebody else would say. Just go at it. But what you have to say, this is helpful for me, was what was the spirit of that disruption? Like, was this something that was mindless? Like, was it inconvenient? Or like, is this something for me to reassess some things?
To be a goal, it has to be measurable and attainable.
Yes.
Those are our requirements, measurable and attainable.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't ever attainable, it wasn't really a goal. It wasn't a well set goal. That would be let's focus on the goal setting, not the behavior.
And this is a great time to say, whoa, was that goal out of whack to begin with?
Yeah. Do I need to recalibrate a little bit?
Tweak it. Yes. Let me not throw it away. Let me tweak it. Let me not throw it away. And that can be helpful at this point,
great.
I would say.
Well, for those of you who are revisiting and have made it to this point in the episode, we're obviously very grateful for being on this ride with you. I hope that you've enjoyed some of the discussion around Life is Strange and the themes. Wade, what else do we want to make sure that we cover before we give people a kind of an encouraging word of hope as they approach and reapproach their goals?
Well, once again, I want to thank Square Enix for providing a copy of this game. I really enjoyed it, and I think that there's a really cool message and theme in this game that players will take from it. So thank you again to Square Enix. I also want to say that we are really excited because we are hard at work on the Last of Us lecture series that's going to be starting in February. So stay tuned for that, just a few more weeks. of that. And you're going to get the full rundown of Monday episode recap and a lot of different guests and show topics for our weekly show as well, coming out on Wednesday when that series starts. So definitely look forward to that sort of thing. And it, our I think Evan would reiterate this. Our promise to you is that there's gonna be something for everybody. Okay, like it's not just people that are like really deep into video games or The Last of Us. Like just like this conversation, it's going to have some application across worlds, across interests, and all that kind of stuff.
And it's going to make these conversations in this show able to be more general too, because we're going to have the right place to have the right kind of discussions about different parts of the games. So if you haven't heard it from anyone, if no one has said this and spoken this to you, your past doesn't define you. It definitely impacts and influences who we are, but we don't have to live focused in the regret that we live in. So whatever you're dealing with, whatever it's whether it's new habits, whether it's old habits that you're trying to break, or whether it's something else entirely, you are going to make it. You got this. You're doing a great job. You can do it. You can make it. And we believe in you. You don't have to be defined by your past. So we are so excited that you've joined us. Thanks so much, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks to Husky by the Geek for our theme music. Thanks to Nick Smith for our graphics. Congratulations on making level 60. And most of all, thanks to you. This show is brought to you by viewers like you, and we really appreciate you. Thanks for taking the time to join us, and we'll see you next episode.